The rule of law. This chapter is not usually tested alone in the P1 but is tested often in P2. However, it is important to know this by heart since you will have to add it in chapters like the precedent, parliamentary sovereignty, civil law, and criminal law, how courts work, and then in police powers, etc. What is the law? Law may influence certain aspects of our society, but most people in the UK and Wales have very little knowledge of the judicial system is used in those nations. For many, their key recognition arises from newspaper articles featuring titles like "Murderer Sentenced to Life," "Young Rapist Goes Free, Burglar Arrested." That sort of headline happens so often that it is not shocking that many people only think of the criminal law and the courts grappling with this type of case when the statute is stated. In fact, the law includes a vast array of circumstances, and England and Wales' judicial system has a multitude of courts and approaches to deal with various kinds of cases. It's good if you start your answer on precedent and other chapters that talk about how the law works. It will set a great foundation to tell the examiner that you know what you are talking about. Different types of law. Very important, as you will have to distinguish and know the details for all these types of laws and in what courts they are heard. The more different, similarities, and work that you know, the better it will be for your analysis in the answer. Although the law includes such a wide range of issues, splitting it into various categories can be useful. The very first differentiation is that between international and domestic, municipal law, domestic law can then be categorized into public and private law. Both categories can eventually be broken down into several various categories. The following are examples of these categories. International and national law. International law is associated with conflicts amongst nations. Most of this law comes from conventions decided upon by the country's governments. National law is the law that exists within a nation. Each nation also has its own national law, and often there are broad variations between the laws of different nations. The differences can be seen from the acknowledgement that Scotland does have its own law and legal framework that is quite different from the law and legal system existing in England and Wales. E.g., while in both systems, criminal cases are tried by a jury, the Scottish jury has 15 representatives, and a simple majority of 8 to 7 can make the decision. The jury of England and Wales, on the other side, includes 12 representatives, of whom at least 10 have to decide on the verdict. Public and private law. There is typically a distinct difference between public and private legislation under national law. In some form, public law affects the state or government, while private law covers conflicts between individuals or companies. It is important to split both public and private legislation into different categories. Public law. Public law applies to the government arrangement. Public law in the United Kingdom consists of constitutional/administrative law, tax, and criminal law. Why is public law important and what does it involve? Public law is important due to the unequal government-public relationship. The legislature is the only agency capable of making decisions on people's freedoms, and they must function within the rules. If they are dissatisfied with an official body's ruling, a person will apply for judicial review. Public attorneys can practice in various areas of law, including constitutional/administrative law, tax law, and criminal law. These are slightly different areas of law. For instance, if you were employed in constitutional/administrative law, you could deal with the NHS, local council, or other government institutions. Criminal lawyers are active in all facets of a prosecution, including trial, police assistance, and appeals. Criminal law typically involves a lot of reporting. There are several explanations as to why public law is distinct from public law. These have changed over the years, but it is widely considered as a mixture of the philosophy of subjection and the theory of the subject. The philosophy of subjection implies that the interaction between the citizen and the state and private law is regulated by public law. The philosophy of the topic implies that public law exists if a citizen becomes a member of a public body. The mixture of these two theories leads to the definition of public law as an area where an actor is an authority with the power to act arbitrarily. When this body operates as a public entity, it follows public law. It does not seem that some areas of law fit into either public or private law. Employment law, for example, fits into both. The employment contract is a matter of private law, while workplace health and safety is a matter of public law. There are three main types of law in this category. These are constitutional law. It monitors the system of governing and any controversies that occur over problems such as who is qualified to vote in the election, or who is qualified to become a parliamentarian, or if an election was held by the proper procedure. Administrative law. It governs the operation of state governments and public bodies such as local councils. The right to judicial review of certain judgments is an important part of this. Judicial review allows courts to assess the reasonableness of a ruling or refusal to make a judgment. If not, the judgment will be reconsidered. Criminal law. This specifies the types of traits that are prohibited at the risk of punishment. It is said that a person committing a crime has violated the state, and therefore the state has the right to charge them. This is so even though an actual survivor of a crime is often implicated as well. For instance, if a criminal performs a burglary offense by breaking into a house and stealing, the state may sue the perpetrator for that robbery, although the suspect may also seek a private prosecution if the state fails to provide a representation to the defendant. However, the state still has the power to intervene and take over the matter even if there is a private prosecution. If the defendant is found guilty at the end of the case, the judge will prosecute the defendant for the crime because he or she has violated the state's criminal law. Any reimbursement would automatically be offered to the survivor, as the situation is not deemed to be a conflict between the burglar and the householder. The criminal courts, furthermore, have the authority to order the defendant to pay compensation to the individual and to render such a decision, as well as to fine the perpetrator. Private law. This is commonly referred to as civil law and has many various branches. Trust law, contract, family law, inheritance law, corporate law, and employment law are the main ones. It is prudent, therefore, to have some understanding of what sorts of conflict might be present in these areas of law. So consider the following situations. A family claims that their package trip was not in accordance with the tour operator's commitment and that they were located in a lower-grade hotel than they had arranged for. A woman purchased a new automobile and found that the motor was unreliable. A man who purchased a new automobile on contract purchase failed to pay the payments because of the hire purchase service. All these conditions are subject to contract law. Of example, there are many other instances where arrangements can be concerned. Look now at the next set of situations. They are also civil issues but of a different nature. In a crash, the tort of negligence, a child's passenger in a vehicle is harmed. A family argues that the vibration and pollution from a plant that has just been built near their house, the annoyance torture, impact their safety. An individual is harmed by defective equipment at work, due to negligence, but may also entail the liability of the workers and/or the obligation of the employer under health and safety regulations. A man claims that a false story about him was published by a newspaper that damaged his credibility, the slander tort. All these cases are subject to the law of tort. A tort occurs where civil law continues to hold that, although there is no agreement between them, one person owes another person a certain kind of legal responsibility known as the duty of care, and that duty of care has been infringed. There are a lot of various kinds of a tort, and only some of them are illustrated by the definitions mentioned. Most incidents are induced by road traffic accidents because motorists owe a duty of care to anyone who could be hurt by their negligent driving. Many private, civil, law sections are focused on specific subjects. Family law includes topics such as whether a marriage is legitimate, what the criteria are for divorce, and who should have the daily care of any family members. Succession law is concerned with governing who inherits property when a person dies without creating a will, as well as with the guidelines for making a valid will. In the business world, corporate law is very important. It governs how a corporation should be established, provides formal rules for managing businesses, and deals with shareholders' and directors' rights and duties. Employment law includes a large scope relating to employment, from the original creation of an employment agreement to termination or unfair dismissal cases. In relation to these fields of private law, there are also laws concerning property, copyright and trademarks, maritime law, and many other subjects, so it can be seen that civil law covers a wide range of situations.